Hey, thank you so much for tuning in. This is part four of a series all about making a shift, making a big, monumental change by making little tiny changes and little tiny shifts. And so today I want to talk about something that, um, to be honest, it seems a little weird to talk about it, but it's about spiritual practice. So, one of the things that I've learned from some of these experts, some of these creative folks, some of these entrepreneurs, when they talk about their success, they talk about things like visualization, they talk about routine, they talk about a lot of other things, but spiritual practice comes up quite a bit. Now, the thing is that when you hear that phrase, a lot of times it conjures this notion of being religious, and I'm not a religious person, but I've always kind of considered myself to be more spiritual. Maybe you're the same way. So it's not about religious per se. Now, if you are religious and you have a spiritual practice like that, that's great too. But I'm speaking of it kind of in a broader, kind of more general idea. And I always like that notion of, holy as in to make whole. So I think a spiritual practice, the goal of it is to really just make ourselves feel more more whole, more alive, more present with our lives. And that's a big kind of thing, a big takeaway that I've gotten from listening and watching these folks talk about this is that a spiritual practice, whether it's prayer, whether it's meditation, it could be the act of journaling, or kind of thinking also just about art making. I mean, all of those can be some type of spiritual practice. It's that notion of getting quiet, maybe reflective, but it's about really being present and kind of trying, not turning off the trickle of thoughts that's in your brain, or but it's maybe more about kind of quieting the monkey mind, as some folks have described it. That we just have this chatter, this almost ceaseless flow of words, and that's where a lot of our self doubt and a lot of our fear come from, because we're always kind of feeding these thoughts, and we're thinking about the past, we're thinking about the present. That's where a lot of the anxiety comes from. Now, I'm not an expert on this stuff, but I just know from personal experience for me that I have all this chatter, all this noise in my head, and finding quiet time, reflective time, helps me kind of deal with that. And so one of the things that you can think about, especially if you're thinking about that routine, I talked about that before, the importance of having a routine and making time and making this change, this thing that you want to do, um, as making it a priority. That's something that you can fit in. You can fit in this spiritual practice, this meditation, if you want, or prayer, or whatever it is that you do for your spiritual practice, fitting that in. And that's exactly what I did. So whenever I sat down thinking about my schedule for the day, I decided, like, okay, I want to meditate. And I've done meditation before, and it was something that I did pretty frequently years ago. And then life gets busy. And it's like, oh, I don't want to get up early, to meditate. And I basically hadn't meditated for years. And so one of the small changes that I did was every morning I spend 15 to 20 minutes just meditating. And I don't do anything too specific. Some people are into transcendental meditation, where you use a mantra and you just repeat that mantra. Other folks do other types of visualization as they're meditating. Some folks just focus on their breath. But for me, I do a variety of things depending on the day, depending on how I'm feeling. But the notion is that I'm not trying to be thoughtless. I think that's the something that people get wrong about meditation, is that they feel like, oh, you're trying to, like, have your mind totally blank. With meditation, though, it's more about not chasing your thoughts, not kind of following the rabbit of your thoughts, and just, if you when you have a thought arise, you just acknowledge it and you let it go, instead of chasing it, and that's where the worry comes from. That's where the fear comes from. So that's kind of how I've been doing it, is that idea of meditation. But I've heard from some of these other experts that, they do prayer. Um, as part of my meditation, I kind of do more generalized prayer. I mean, like I said, I'm not religious. I don't prescribe to a particular religion, but I sort of just have a prayer, or just ask the universe, because I always feel that the universe is conspiring with us. And so I'm asking the universe for certain things. And so prayer, meditation, heard a lot of folks talk about doing morning pages. So maybe you're familiar with Julia Cameron and her morning pages. And that's a way to just sort of dump your brain. I mean, Julia Cameron describes it as a brain dump. And the idea is you get up first thing in the morning, and you write full 3 full pages longhand, and you don't read it, you don't go back, you just dump out all that garbage. And for a lot of folks, that becomes just this kind of quiet, reflective, I'm dumping out all those thoughts. So whereas meditation, sort of like you let those thoughts go, you acknowledge and let them go. Journal writing or the morning pages, you're doing the same thing. You're thinking them, you're putting down on paper, and you let them go. And you're getting rid of all that junk and making way for something bigger that day. And for a lot of folks, art making is a very spiritual thing, or some kind of creative practice. So maybe it's playing music, or whatever it is your creative thing is. So creating something and getting into that sort of very present state of mind can be a great way. So getting up and spending 20 minutes. I do a meditation practice, like I said, 15, 20 minutes, and then I do a journaling practice. And sometimes that's writing, and sometimes that's creating, making art, doing stuff in my visual journal. So I kind of do both of those things every morning, or most mornings. And it's really, really helped. It's really helped kind of clear out a lot of the doubt, the fear, the anxiety, the worry. It's still there. It still bubbles up from time to time, but not like it had been. It doesn't control those thoughts. So so for me, that meditation has been very valuable. And so something for you to consider. So if you're thinking like, oh, I really want to make this change, again, if it's small or big, think about, can you do some type of spiritual practice? Can you, 15, 20 minutes. Some folks meditate or pray several times a day. I've just been doing it in the morning. Maybe eventually I can do it in the evening as well. But so think about how that can be something that you can do. It doesn't take a lot of time, and the benefits are pretty profound. And it's, again, a lot of these experts had just kept saying about how when they started it, just how things really started to shift for them. So anyway, so think about that. And as always, if you've got questions or comments, pop them into the comments. I'd love to hear what you're thinking. If you've been trying some of these things, I would love to know what your experience has been. So anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, thank you so much, and happy creating.